Okay, good afternoon everybody, to members of the Collingwood Football Club Board, executive, football department, and to members of the media. It is with a heavy heart today that I accepted the resignation on behalf of the board of our Chief Executive, Gary Pert. There is only one way of measuring the tenure of a Chief Executive or a leader in any organisation, and that is the place better than when it was taken over? In the 10 years that Gary Pert has been Chief Executive, following years of service as a director and as a player of the Collingwood Football Club, and a man who started his football journey as a 14-year-old at the Fitzroy Football Club, the 10 years that Gary's been the Chief Executive have been unbelievable. The building that you sit in today, a $25 million purpose-built facility for a social club and for women's sport, and the continuation of the growth of the Collingwood Football Club, is so much a part of what Gary has brought to the Collingwood Football Club. Not only that, but the entire precinct. Record memberships, premierships, grand finals, night premierships, everything that you could possibly hope for in a 10-year plan that was set up 10 years ago has been achieved by Gary Pert in his time. He's been a great friend to me and to Carla and myself, and to Andy, Pert, his wife, who's with us today. I'd like to personally thank you, and on behalf of the board and the Collingwood Football Club, thank you, Andy, for everything that you and the family have contributed to our football club. To Gary, as a professional, as a Collingwood man, and as a great friend, mate, thank you for everything. And I'll now hand you over to Gary to explain why he's decided to resign at this time. But Gary, once again, on behalf of everybody at the Collingwood Football Club, thank you for 10 magnificent years of service as the Chief Executive Officer.
Thanks, Ed, and thanks for everyone coming along, board members and obviously the media, and we've got staff in the room. Just caught up with the staff this morning to take them through what's unfolded over recent times, and just to give you a little bit of background, what I spoke to the staff about is I sat down with Ed last week and resigned as the CEO of the Collingwood Football Club. It was a decision that was made after quite a period of time thinking about where the club is at, and I think we've been very transparent about the fact that we've engaged into a process of redefining what the Collingwood Football Club's got to be in the future. So what's the club going to look like in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? And as we know, Peter Murphy's heading up that project to create a picture of what the Collingwood Football Club's going to look like. I was involved in starting that process, so the first conversation with Peter started with me, where I asked him to come along, and with a different set of eyes. I admire the work that he's actually done in his with his business background, and I asked him to put a different set of eyes over us as a club and start to predict what the club looks like in the future. During those conversations, the other thing as a CEO, what it does is it forces you to think that if we're creating this magnificent vision and blueprint of the future, am I going to be the one that's actually going to be leading that during the period of time? And if I'm not, I've got the responsibility to go to the board and put my hand up and say, after 10 years, my time's up and it's my time to step aside, give the board the opportunity, which I think will come out of the process of identifying what we want this club to be, is to help define the sort of CEO that will lead this club into the future as well. And again, I see that as the responsible thing for me to do. When I sat down with Ed, to be totally transparent, I'm midway through a contract and I had to request to be let out of that contract. I gave Ed the clear reasons why I think the timing is really good. The timing's good for the club, and I do think it's really exciting, but also the timing's right for me. I've been doing the role now for 10 years. It's a big role in that 10 years. It's got literally twice as big. We now have twice the staff. We have twice the amount of teams. The facilities are huge. We've done some great things with our sponsorship, our membership, our whole commercial model. But during that time, I make the decision on behalf of myself and Andy, my wife's here, and my kids, in terms of it's an all-encompassing 24/7 role. It's pretty hard to get away from the demands of the game, and whether it's on weekends or on holidays, whatever. And so the decision was made in my best interest, the best interests of my family, to say 10 years is enough, and it's now time for someone else to take hold of the new vision with the board, with the amazing executive that are here to actually drive things forward. So that's what sits behind the decision, and I've got to say, as I sit here and when I spoke to Ed about the decision that I'd made, and he was amazingly supportive, we then had a great chat and a bit of a laugh about what the last 10 years has been, and there's been a lot of success, obviously a highlight of the premiership and some great on-field success, but there's also been some challenging times and a few fires that we had to put out along the way, but certainly very proud of the last 10 years.
You mentioned the timing. Does the potential opportunities at the AFL, obviously you're a highly regarded executive in the industry, does that have any bearing on your decision?
No. There's been roles that have been available in the industry for really the last 6 months, and I haven't engaged in any of those because I've known that my next step is to actually take a break. As I was saying, I've been in executive roles now for 25 years, and for me, the thing that I've talked to my family about is when is going to be the time that we allocate to do the personal stuff and the travel things that we've been wanting to do, and it's been very hard to be able to execute those things in the sort of roles that I'm doing. So I can guarantee you I'm not thinking of any roles, I'm not even entering into conversations. I literally have those personal ambitions with my family as the only thoughts I've had as part of this process.
So Gary, is the review unearthing shortcomings from your administration?
I would have no idea, because the review which has been done by Peter Murphy is something that I've never sat down with Peter or the board or anyone else and actually talked to any elements of those. And I know we've got a board meeting tomorrow, and there might be some discussions about what's being uncovered. But I think it's really important to understand, in the same way as when I did the review 10 years ago to establish our vision back then, it's quite a big process. So it can take 3, 4, 6 months to actually form the vision of what you want the club to be. So this is not something that Peter's going, I've spent a little bit of time in the club and now I've got the picture. He'll need to do a lot more work. There's certainly been no conversations with me, and I believe the board, of any element of any outcomes of the review.
So the timing just seems to be well. I think I heard you say on radio the other day that the review's in next week or the week after.
No, that was misquoted. No, I said Peter will come in the next couple of weeks, which he's doing. We've got a board meeting, as Gary said, tomorrow night. But the review itself, and I don't want to get into semantics, but it is a blueprint for the future. Yeah. It's what this club needs to be after everything that's happened with the AFL, the change of equalisation and everything else we've done. We've built this place. We've got the women's teams on board. Where do we go to now? What's the next step for Collingwood? They've just built new stadiums in Perth. The economy's changed. The Adelaide Oval's on. Where do we fit into this now? Where's Victorian football fit in? So that's where it's all going. So no, to answer your question, Caroline, there hasn't been any shortcomings examined because we haven't even got to that stage. It's still a fair way off, but it's an evolutionary role. And we think now with Peter being able to actually go in as well, it's one thing looking from the cheap seats. Now he can actually get his hands dirty as well and be there while we have an extensive process of finding the next Chief Executive Officer of the Collingwood Football Club.
So as Ed was saying there is, I'll finish up when I've completed the transition with Peter. So that would be, it's got no end point on it. I'll be now Following this, Peter will start to, because he's in the club actually looking at elements, he will gradually transition into that CEO role while we're looking for the next CEO, so he'll be the interim. I would suggest... No, one of the things, which is a good question, one of the things that I flagged to Ed is while we are reviewing the future and we're looking at the longer term elements, and there's also decisions on people and structures around next year, which all starts to roll out at this time of the year. One of the reasons why I picked this particular time is to go to Ed and go, ethically, I don't want to be part of or in the room when decisions are being made about people into the future when I'm not going to be there. I wouldn't want to be part of those conversations and then in a month or two's time leave and people look back and go, you knew you were going, yet you actually made decisions on behalf of me. So rightly or wrongly, one of the reasons I picked the timing was for that reason.
In a lot of ways, it's like a politician who goes to an election and then resigns 3 weeks later after the election. There's no joy in that for anybody. So again, Gary's been very selfless in making the call at a time that suits the club. I mean, no one knows better about the running of the club than Gary as the CEO, and he's picked his time in the context of everything else that's happening here at the moment. And it's a selfless act as always. Gary's always done what he's believed is the best for the football club, and that continues to be the case. And it's why we're delighted that once he's finished, he's able to come back as a champion of the club and somebody who's left an indelible mark on this club. 10 years as CEO at the football club is a tremendous effort.
Gary, does the chief executive come from outside the club? Do you need fresh blood?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
No, well, we're not. There's no. We're not going to put any restrictions on it at all. We'll get the best person for the club after we get the results through or in conjunction with our blueprint for the future so that we get the right person. I remember when Gary was appointed, a few people raised their eyebrows, but the reason why we went for Gary was because, one, he had a tremendous football background, but two, and most importantly at that stage, was that he was a senior executive coming out of media. And we believed that media was going to be the key area of growth in the AFL in that 10-year period. You know, we have to have a look around to say we pretty much got that one right. And in that time, one of the things I didn't add there was that Gary has overseen the building up of our media department to be one of the biggest in Australian, well, probably the biggest in Australian sport by a long way in club sport, and one of the biggest media companies in sport in general. So there's been a lot of great things that have come through this 10-year period. And as Gary mentioned there, we'll look to put somebody in who fills the gaps that we believe are required to take us to the next level.
So Gary talked about the future, Ed. Does that future include Graham Allen, whose suspension is up in a few months?
Well, today we're talking about the Chief Executive, Cara, so there's no decisions on that. Again, that's all part of our blueprint for the future, who will be here and who won't be.
Gary, just coming into the season knowing this could be your last, or was there a light bulb moment at some point during the year?
No, I didn't come into the season thinking it would be the last. I think it evolved during those conversations about this planning for the future, and I think these times are really exciting. I know how excited I was when I was setting the vision 10 years ago about what we wanted Collingwood to become, and when I started that process again, it puts me in a position then as the CEO to go, well, you've got to make a decision. You're either in or you're not. And the further I got into it in talking to Peter and seeing the potential, and we've had some of our executives travel overseas to some of the biggest sporting clubs in the world and pick up ideas that are really exciting about what Collingwood's going to become. But am I going to be the driver, or does someone have to be coming in, feel that they own that vision, they're part of it, and therefore they're going to passionately drive it? That's where the conversation started to come, and like I said, that was done with my family, and to them I think they could look at it and go, we know you love the job, but we also look forward to the change of lifestyle of not being in a role that is just so all-encompassing as well.
Did the on-field fortunes of the team have any impact in the decision?
Absolutely nothing. We could be at the top of the ladder, the bottom of the ladder, and I think that would probably change the way Bucks is seeing things and feeling. But as a CEO, I need to be looking at the future. I need to be making those decisions. And like I said, this is a decision where I can honestly say, in the best interests of the club, which is where this all started, a new CEO at the time right now to help build it and then help drive it. That's because I've been asked by the staff, was it a tough decision? And it was a tough decision to actually commit to it and book in a time to talk to Ed and actually articulate it. That was tough because I've been here for a long time. But it was actually an easy decision because to me it was so obvious. You know, we're building this new plan. Someone's got to come in. I'm not going to be committed to that. It becomes a bit of a obvious outcome, which I'm 100% comfortable with.
So you talk about the review. How much will impact the results like this today?
None.
None?
No. I've often said this, those things make no difference in the context of the whole season or anything else. You look at these, it's not the cheer squad who are making these decisions. It's people who are sitting there with serious minds to come up with serious answers to serious questions. So we look at everything in its totality. So, obviously made us feel a lot better yesterday, and given the knowledge of what we were going to do today, it was quite emotional for the few people, Andy and Perty and myself. Admit I had some tears in my eyes when the siren went, not just because of the result, because it was a wonderful thing for Gary and Andy to have their last game as the Chief Executive Officers to not only be a win, but a stirring win. Two players off the ground and everything that game meant for us. So it was a wonderful day at the football. But no, we're looking at things in a broader issue and looking, as Gary said, 3, 5, 10 years down the track to see where we want this club to be. What's that?
You'd rather win the last 5.
Oh, absolutely. That's what we're here for. We're happy we won the last 2, I can promise you. What's that?
You talk about putting out fires over the time. Do you regret any of the circumstances of the Malthouse-Buckley handover? Could you have done any of it differently?
As a CEO, you always learn. Do I regret any of the decisions? No. Because I look at it and I go, you make decisions on the information that's available at that particular time. That might be about a coach, it might be about recruiting a player, it might be about a strategic decision, you're going to go down a particular path. Based on the information available at the time, this is in the best interests of Collingwood. And I can say for 10 years that's how I've approached it. I think I've made every decision in the best interests of Collingwood and the supporters, and trying to make our supporters feel proud of the club. And that's the word I always reference through. I put it through a filter of going, if we do this, would our supporters feel proud? That's how I've tried to run the club. Can you guarantee how things roll out? No. As a CEO, there's so many things, and the reason you can't guarantee is because you're dealing with people, and people respond differently over time. So I don't have any regrets on decisions I've made.
What about the turnover of football bosses, which has been a big talking point in the last few months?
Well, I don't have any regrets. There's all, without going through them all individually, there's all very specific reasons why decisions or movements were made. I suppose the only thing that I would look at right at the moment and go, am I happy with Jeff Walsh heading up the footy department? I think he's fantastic. I think he's everything that we could ask and that Bucks could want in a director of footy. He's doing a review at the moment. Am I 100% confident that he's the best person to be doing that? Absolutely. So without going through the specifics of each dynamic, and you know them as well as everyone, I just look at the outcome right at the moment and go, we've got a fantastic person in place.
Do you hope Nathan coaches next year, Gary? Do you hope Nathan gets another contract?
I deliberately don't have a view, except a bit of a personal one, which is Bucks is one of the best and most impressive young leaders I've ever worked with. So I just look at someone like that and just he's brought so much to the club, so much to the culture, so much to the player group. So as a person who is just so impressive, I want the best, and I want to see him. And one of the reasons I've been doing the job for the last few years is I want to see him get all the the rewards for the way he goes about it. But I deliberately don't want to create a headline on because of the circumstance I just said. It's not appropriate for me to have a view on that, which is why I brought it up.
Sorry, Gary. Do you foresee any sort of challenges or conflicts with the fact that the businessman will be both interim CEO and reviewing the club?
No. That's why we put him in. Yeah.
Gary, what's your proudest accomplishment during your time at Collingwood?
I would say the premiership is one that, you know, I look back probably for different reasons. It's I love seeing how happy the players were because I know how hard they work for that and what it literally changes their lives. But the thing that sticks with me is the 12 months following that, to see the impact that premiership had on Collingwood supporters right around the world. You know, I'd bump into Collingwood supporters and hear the most amazing stories of the impact that had on their lives. So that, and to be reminded what this club is to so many people and how important it is, that would definitely be right up there. But also one of the things I'm proudest of is the fact the work we do with the Salvation Army, putting homeless people into homes. We don't have to do it. You know, it's sort of something the club's decided to do it. It's part of our DNA. And that's one of the reasons I love it so much, because in amongst what we do as with our football programs and our elite athletes, it would be easy for us to say, then we don't have time or we don't have the passion to do other important things. You know, I think it's an amazing part of the Collingwood Football Club. So that community work, and especially that program, would be, you know, some of the things I'm most proudest of.
Since then, the team has been in a type of transition phase. You've repeatedly stated the club's high expectations on field. Has the bar been set too high, or has the team failed to rise up on the field?
Well, you know, so this year would be a classic, which is, are we going to make the finals? We're still mathematically in it, but it's going to be a challenge. The players and coaches set to the CEO, to the board, to the club to say this year we want to be back in the finals. And I support that, and you know, I would have been disappointed if they didn't have that ambition. But that is being set by the players and the coaches. And the problem with that is that there's 18 clubs and there's 8 spots in the finals. So we go out, and we've had so many close games, and I could go through it, and I've probably whinged to you about it after some of those games, how close we were and we didn't get there. It's a competition. We had those ambitions. We're not where we wanted to be at the start of the season, but I'm only articulating the ambitions set by the players and coaches at the start of the year.
Bucks last week described the club as, said it was under siege in a sense. With the review going on, and it looks like heading for a 4th year of no finals. Has this been like one of the toughest periods in the hill?
Oh, look, maybe I'm Pollyanna, but I've never been more invigorated with the way the club's going. We've had a long period of success. We've been out of the finals the last few years. Yeah, that's been a bit of a disappointment. There's reasons for that along the journey, but we're not going to go into all those excuses or reasons, whatever the case may be. But have a look around where you're sitting at the moment. Have a look at what's outside. Look at what we've been able to do here. The deals that have been done at the MCG. As Gary says, 300 people tonight, instead of sleeping under a tree, will be sleeping in accommodation provided by the Collingwood Football Club and its memberships. Under Gary's stewardship, the staff has doubled, and now 50% of the staff of the Collingwood Football Club are women. We've instigated a women's netball team, so women have been coming in here and are using this as state-of-the-art facilities where before they weren't getting near facilities like this. Our women's football team has been just one of the seminal moments in our football club's history in our 125th year. All those things that Gary has been the CEO over the top of have been absolutely fantastic. So, that's what we're looking at today. We look back, and as I said in my opening remarks, you have to be judged on, is this place a better place than what it was 10 years ago when Gary took over? And I can't think of any matrix that it isn't.
Has the AFL made it tougher for you, though? Have you had to do this with one hand behind your back?
Look, it's tough because, Gary makes the point always, and it's Gary's line. There we go. We're going to open up so you can see behind us, ladies and gentlemen. We're unfurling the new chief executive behind. Did that with Mick Malthouse when he first came to the club in the Volvo. Sorry, Kerry, it was the AFL. No, look, I mean, Gary's line... Yeah, it totally has been. And Gary's line's a beauty. He says, what's good for football in the AFL's eyes is generally bad for Collingwood. And that's been the situation. The equalisation has really blown up our business plan. And we had a very good business plan, Purdy, well done, that was delivering record profits on a yearly basis. And the AFL take that money off us these days. We started off with a plan that was going to really focus on building from our own money state-of-the-art facilities and having the best possible coaches and the most amount of coaches, and they brought a soft cap in over the top of it. Even when we had the interchange going, they chopped the interchange up to stuff up our game plan. So, it's been pretty tough in recent times because the AFL, and this is again, I doff my cap to Gary's chief executive role, the AFL saw us, quote, as outliers, and they were trying to drag us back in. Their words, not ours. And that's been a frustration. But that's the world we live in, and that's why we're having this blueprint for the future. No point barking at the moon. We know what the reality of life is in the AFL these days. And as Darwin said, it's not the survival of the fittest, it's those who can adapt quickest survive. So that's what we have to do. We need to adapt, and we're in that period right now. I'm sorry? No, probably not. I've got no idea. They're being done separately. I mean, obviously Jeff Walsh's football review has got a timeline on it because we've got timelines in football, but Peter Murphy's is going to be ongoing, as Gary said. It's not like we're just going to hand down a blueprint and that'll be it. That'll continue to evolve. And Chris Thomas, who is evaluating the board and what we need to look at with the board, probably won't take that long, I wouldn't have thought.
I don't have any reference point to that at all. Like, literally, I've loved my job. I've loved my time here. I've been totally focused. I haven't been looking at anything else outside that or planning for the future. The only thing that I did know is that at the end of this period of time, whenever it was, I knew I wanted to take a family break and do a whole lot of things I'd been wanting to do for a long time. So I don't have any views or any ambitions in footy or outside of footy.
What are the travel plans, Gary?
What's that?
What are the travel plans?
Well, Andy knows them and I know them, and
he'll
that's
be
all.
booking exclusively through Pie in the Sky Travel. We have the
all
best bets in
important.
flying Emirates Airlines right around the world.
Yeah.
The world's #1 airline. Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I, as far as to say, and this is how these things roll out, we bought a place in a location 8 years ago because we thought, I'll probably go to Collingwood and I'll work there for 4 or 5 years, and we'll spend far more time after that in this particular place. And the way it works out, I probably spend 1 week a year there. That's the sort of thing that I'll be spending a lot more time in that location as part of that. So they're the extent of my plans at this stage.
You said you ruled out any position, any of those executive positions going at the AFL, you ruled yourself out of those.
I wouldn't be talking to anyone about positions at the moment. I'm not interested.
You're one of the leading voices on the drugs debate a few years ago, Gary. How do you reflect on that?
Oh, well, I think that, my voice is on behalf of the Collingwood Football Club, and I think that we played a really important role. And the feedback that I've had, not only from other clubs, but from parents of players, and that's parents of AFL players and other parents of young kids that look at our AFL players as really real role models. And I had so many people because they could see it was when I raised issues at the start, you don't have everyone clapping and cheering, and there was a lot of resistance to it. And it was quite amazing how much support, like literally from parents from AFL players from other clubs, would contact me to say, you've got to keep on going because changes need to be made. And I think the changes that were made are appropriate, and the whole program is much better in the interests of the players and in the short term, long term, and as them as a role model. So I'm very satisfied with that.
Could that be one of his legacies?
I think it's a great legacy. Yeah, there's no doubt that Gary's position on behalf of the Collingwood Football Club and his honesty and the courage because it takes a fair bit of courage to put your head over the parapet in this game. There's plenty of people lining up with vested interests or just a differing opinion to give it a good kicking. And Gary took a lot of personal, abuse, I suppose, is not too strong a word, to get across the line. But it was something that was important, and Gary believed in it. He'd researched it and helped drive change, which has made the game a lot better going forward. I've got one question for you. Do you think you should have got a free kick when Gary Ablett pushed you in the back on that mark?
The only thing I'd say is I played for 14 years, and if Gary Ablett didn't take that mark, he probably wouldn't remember I played. So it's lucky he took it.
Gary, a lot of people seem to have a view on Eddie and when he should finish up. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't have a holiday house, so I've got
I can tell you now, for the Collingwood Football Club, I know everyone has different opinions on Ed, and non-Collingwood supporters will, they come up to me in the street and they've got clear views. I see what Ed does on a daily, weekly basis, and there's no doubt to me that Ed is the leader of this club. This would be a very different club if Ed wasn't the president in the last 10 years. Now, that's not hypothetical. I can guarantee you with let's call them the negotiations with the AFL and negotiations with third parties that deal with this club, including the government, we're a very different club if Ed wasn't the president. Now, I see that every day. I don't go and say, hey, look at what Ed did today or yesterday or last week, but I can tell you now, 100%, Ed needs to be, and I don't want to commit him to something long-term when I'm making the decisions I'm making, but right at the moment, I would love to see him continue in his role, great board, continuing to drive the club, and Collingwood needs a big personality and character to be Collingwood, and so that'd be my clear view.
How much football acumen will the next CEO need?
Look, it's one of those answers, it doesn't hurt. It's a bit like chicken soup. May not cure you, but it won't hurt. And that's really it. If we hit the jackpot when we got Gary, let's be honest, because you've got a guy who was a superstar player who started as a 14-year-old and then went into the media, so he had all the attributes we could hope for. But part of what we're doing is that not every person has all the attributes. And as Gary said, when you've got Jeff Walsh running the football department, that gives us a head start as far as that's concerned. So there's probably less of a need for somebody with full-on footy knowledge if you've got a Jeff Walsh in the football department. But we'll work all that through, and that's what Peter will be doing, Chris Thomas, Jeff Walsh and the board. That's the job for us to find out that person.
Sorry, could Peter Murphy emerge as Gary's long-term successor?
I don't think so, no. Peter's got a business career. He's been good enough to sacrifice the time to do this, but I think that's where it'll finish.
Did you feel how long you could possibly keep doing the role?
No, I've got no idea.
Yeah.
No. I think I'm the second youngest president in the AFL, so got plenty of time. I'm only warming into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've sort of tried to keep myself together in the mix, but there's been a lot of difficult emotional times, which I won't get into because then I'll get emotional. So, but the conversations with staff, and I've been here for 10 years. A lot of the people here I brought into the organisation or promoted or developed and very close with. So those conversations are very difficult. Also little things like Andy, my wife, hasn't helped when we head off to the last game. She's like, oh, well, this is the last time, or, do you reckon we'll ever get invited to this? And it's like, Andy, you know what, I'm trying to keep myself together here. So that has, and it's not like we're dying, we're just not going to be in that role. So there's been points where I really have had to keep myself together because it's not a sort of a normal job. It is. That was a shocking question because I was good until then. But this is, it is it's a club. I don't feel like I'm running a business. You know, I feel like I'm running a club on behalf of the people at the back of the room, but also of the supporters. So there's 85,000 members and 1 million supporters every day that you're running the club for. So, and you can see the effect that has on them. Right at the moment, if we're losing games or when we're winning and we're successful, when you're making decisions and you know how they're going to roll out to so many people, it does keep on reinforcing to you how emotional it is and the impact of it. But that's just made me love the role more because you can have that impact. You know, I could go and run a business producing widgets and profits, but I wouldn't get the satisfaction of knowing the impact that I could have. Ask you a question.
All right, mate. Yeah. And so you can imagine what it was like when Jamie Elliott was lining up for that goal yesterday to put us in front. I think maybe it was the stand that just pushed it through that extra metre. I think on that note, ladies and gentlemen, it goes without saying now, because you've seen it all before you, just what this club is all about. People work here, but it's more than that. It's a vocation, it's a love, it's a magnificent obsession for all of us. And Gary is the chief executive, a paid employee of the club. But as you can see, he's black and white, right through to his bootlaces, to his wonderful wife, Andy, who's here, who we're going to invite you to the lunch, Andy, don't worry. You better believe it. But to all Gary's staff, who have all turned out in numbers today, there's been a fair few tears around the place today. And there was some yesterday from some hard-bitten people who, when that goal went through, just knew what it meant to send Gary Pert out a winner that he deserved to yesterday. And Gary, on behalf of those 1 million supporters, those 80,000 members that you've helped drive to become members of this Collingwood Football Club, to all those people who celebrated the 2010 Grand Final and everything you've given to our football club, thank you very much, mate. You've been a star.
And if I could just, I do want to finish by just saying to the board that are here, I thank their support. To the media, you are a key driver of what we are as a club as well. So for everyone, I probably won't get the chance to thank you, but I do thank you for your interaction and the relationship we've had, and for the supporters that are watching this as well. I just want to thank them for their support over the 10 years, to keep on rolling up for games, to keep on backing me in as the CEO, and so I'd like to, this might be the last chance to say a big thank you to everyone. Thank you.
Great.